Good morning. I hope that you all have a very profitable and beneficial staff development day today. Now I would like to start the day off with a little reflection on where we've been the last few weeks and where we still yet have to go. Today is a good day, good timing to have the staff development day today because we finished the first 7 weeks of school. We've finished the first round of the 6 weeks assessments. And so I think now is a good time for us to reflect on where we've been and where we're going. As you're aware, acutely aware, we're going through some changes in our curriculum. We have brought online a new curriculum with new 6 weeks assessments. Many of you may ask, why are we doing this? What is the reason for all the changes that we've made this year in the curriculum? Because I admit we've made more changes this year than any time that I can remember. The reason for it is very simple. The game has changed. The rules of the game have changed. We're in a time now where the expectations for students is so much higher than it has ever been before. TOS has passed. TOS no longer is the measure of our success as a school district as far as the state of Texas is concerned. We're now in the era of TAKS. And I would like for us to talk for just a moment about the differences between TOS and TAKS and the differences in the expectations of those two assessment instruments. First of all, for a TOS, we as a district and we as teachers could teach a portion of the text and still come out okay. Not so with TAKS. We have got to cover all of the text. Also, our curriculum in the past has been aligned to TOS objectives. Now, our curriculum is the coverage of all the text objectives. Also, the TOS test tested at a different level than the TAKS test. There was less problem solving. There's much more problem solving in the new TAKS test. Also, the difficulty of the problems to be solved are so much more complex in the TAKS test than they were in the TOS test. For an example, in TOS, you would have a single step or possibly a double step to solving a problem. Now in TAKS, it's multiple steps. Let me give you a specific example. In 4th grade, starting in the 4th grade, in reading, students will no longer just be given a single passage to read and then answer questions. But starting in the 4th grade, students will be given 2 passages to read. And then after they read those passages, they will be given a bank of questions. They will then have to read the question and determine which passage the question relates to before they can answer the question. That's starting in the 4th grade. In diving contests, they talk about a level of difficulty, that some dives have a greater level of difficulty than do other dives. Well, I think we can say that TAKS has a different level of difficulty inherent in the scope of the test than does the TOS test. So we're in a different ball game. We therefore must make sure that we raise the same level of difficulty with the way that we instruct our students to prepare them for that TAKS test. What this means is that the same level of performance will no longer guarantee success. That's true for both teachers and students. We can no longer teach what we've been teaching and the way that we've been teaching. What we're teaching must change, as well as how we're teaching it. Also for students, the same level of performance, the same level of effort, the same depth of thought that they have done in the past will no longer yield success. Now, is that all bad? I don't think so. I think it's good. I think it's great to challenge our students, to get them to go to greater depths and to think more clearly and more deeply than they have in the past, and to work harder, put more effort to get the same level of success. And that's what we're requiring at this time. I've used this analogy in the past, and I'm going to use it again. I believe that the transition that we're going through right now, from the TOS test to the TAKS test, and to what that means as far as the teaching of the whole spectrum of the curriculum, it's at the same level of critical nature as that of a heart transplant to an individual. I think you can understand, and I know you can understand how you would feel if someone near and dear to you were going to have to go through a heart transplant in order to be able to survive. And I think you can understand the critical nature of such a transition. That's what we're going through with this curriculum. It's at the same critical level as is a heart transplant. If we're not successful over these next 2 years, and thank goodness we have 2 years to make this transition, but if we're not successful in what we're doing, then we will not survive academically, just as if a person that's going through a heart transplant will not survive if it does not go well. So I want to make sure that you understand that we do have a critical process to go through, but thankfully we have 2 years. The true test is in April of 2004 when we administer the TAKS test to our students. But we can't wait. We cannot wait until then. We've got to start now, and we've got to move forward on this journey. I'd like to compliment you on what you've done the first few weeks of school. I've been most amazed at the way our teachers and administrators have handled this process of transition to the new curriculum. I'm very, very pleased with what you've done. Now, it's not perfect, and we've still got a way to go, and I know that you know that. But we are starting the journey, and we're starting the journey in the right way. What's it going to take for us to be successful? Well, the first thing I want to make sure that you understand is let's reflect on what we've already done. This summer, we had over 120 teachers that came together. They worked to do several things. Number one, they worked to align the curriculum. They wanted to make sure that we had all the objectives at the places and the grade levels and in the courses that they needed to be. For example, in 5th grade science. In 5th grade science, if we just taught the texts that are in the just taught the texts that are in the 5th grade curriculum from the state, when it came time to take the 5th grade TAKS test, our students might not have performed as well as they should have because only 55% of the tests that are going to be, or the questions that are going to be on the TAKS test are in the TAKS curriculum for the 5th grade. So these teachers had to go back from lower levels and pull those objectives up and make sure that the students knew them or know what they should have learned earlier in order to be prepared for the new objectives that are going to be on the TAKS test in the 5th grade. So that process took place. Also, our teachers took all the objectives and they put them into 6 weeks pacing charts. These 6 weeks pacing charts ensure that we cover the spectrum of what needs to be covered within that 6 weeks period of time so that we can make sure that we cover all the curriculum through the course of the year. Then finally, teachers work to develop the first 2 6 weeks assessments, the one for the first 6 weeks and the second 6 weeks. So we've gone through that process right now, or as of last week we completed that process. Some of you may be saying now, well, that 6 weeks pacing chart, that was just too much. We can't do all that. And I admit that there may be some tweaking that we have to look at, but I urge you not to back off from the total scope of the text that we must teach. We're in a different ballgame. We no longer can just teach just a narrow slice of the curriculum. We must teach all of it. Secondly, we've now given the first bank of tests. Some of you may not be satisfied with the scores that your students received. I'm not satisfied either. But let's be careful here and not to blame the test and start to criticize the test. I know as a teacher myself, I very seldom ever gave a test that was absolutely perfect. And I know that you may be in the same boat. Teacher-developed tests are going to have errors on them. We're going to do the best we can to make sure that we eliminate those errors. But we've got to be very careful that we don't back off from the standards that we need to set. These 6 weeks assessments must have high standards. And let's resist the urge to blame the test for the low scores, and let's look at what it's going to take to get our students up to scoring where we want them to score on those 6 weeks assessments. Let's remember this. What if that 6 weeks assessment had been the TAKS test? How would you have felt about those results? Would you have been satisfied? Well, I think the answer is clear. No, we would not. I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make sure that we have congruence between 3 things. We're going to have congruence between the TAKS test and the 6 weeks test and our daily instruction. What this means is if our students are doing well on that 6 weeks assessment, that should show that they're going to do pretty well on the TAKS test. One of the goals that I have of this entire process is very simple and straightforward. I do not want a student that is passing our curriculum to fail the TAKS test. We've had that in the past. We've had students making 80s and 90s on our curriculum, yet failing the TAKS test. That should never be. There should be enough congruence between that tax test, our 6 weeks assessments, and our daily classroom work that students that are successful in our classroom, it's a slam dunk that they'll be successful in that tax test. So there needs to be congruence between this tax test and the 6 weeks assessments. There needs to be congruence between the 6 weeks assessments and what we do on a daily basis, so that what we're doing on a daily basis is at the depth and complexity and scope that is necessary to ensure student success on that 6 weeks test. So what I encourage you to do is to look at what we're doing on a daily basis and make sure that that's up to the level of the 6 weeks test and the tax test. Well, I think it's good timing that we have the Staff Development Day today, and I want to talk to you about what I think we should have as objectives of what we'll accomplish today. First of all, let's look at that 6 weeks assessment that we gave, and let's make sure that we tweak it and make the adjustments that are necessary on that 6 weeks assessment so that next year, when we give it, we have not the errors and some of the problems that we had this year. Also, we need to look very carefully at the second 6 weeks assessment, and I bet you will. And I bet your level of concern of that 6 weeks assessment has been raised tremendously. Let me tell you what I encourage you to do. I think it would be a very good idea for every teacher that has a 6 weeks assessment that has already been developed to take that assessment yourself, just as if you were a student. When you take that assessment, you see intricacies of the assessment that you otherwise do not see. And let's make sure that we get the questions properly constructed. Let's make sure that the errors are eliminated, and let's get that information back to the Curriculum and Instruction Department before we print that second 6 weeks assessment. The next thing we need to do is look at that second 6 weeks pacing chart. Let's make sure that we understand it. Let's make sure that we look at how we can cover that material within the time frame that we have to cover it. What this will require is looking at new ways of teaching. We may have to find new ways to integrate and combine that we've never looked at in the past. We've got to make sure that we're covering it at the depth and complexity that is required for that 6 weeks assessment. Now, let me tell you one thing that I think is a pretty well a given. If we just go by the textbook, if we just follow the textbook, we'll not get to where we need to be. Now, the textbook has got to be a resource, and it is valuable to us, but it is only a resource. But the curriculum that is lined out for you in the OASIS system, that is the curriculum that we've got to look at. That 6 weeks pacing chart, that is what our goal must be. Well, let me conclude my comments this morning by simply saying this. We are on a 2-year journey. We're not going to get there overnight. It's going to take a lot of thought. It's going to take some monitoring and some adjusting to what we're doing, but we're on a 2-year journey. And if we stay together and if we keep our eye on the goal, and the goal being that of success on the 2004 tax test, then I think that we'll be okay. I remember 5 years ago when I stood in front of the faculty of this district and offered the challenge of becoming a recognized district. There were quite a few people that were very skeptical, and they did not believe that we could do that. Well, we've proven that we can. Some of you may have the same feelings about the new tax assessment and what we're asking you to do with the 6 weeks pacing charts and with the 6 weeks assessments. You may think it's beyond your ability as a teacher or beyond the ability of our students to attain the levels we're asking you to attain. Well, I don't believe that. I believe that if we keep our eye on the prize and work together and stay together on what we're trying to do, then by the time April 2004 comes along, we will do a very, very good job. Thank you for the efforts that you put forth to this time, and I look forward to hearing great reports about what you do today in getting ready for the next few rounds of testing and the next instruction that we're going to be doing between now and Christmas. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.